welcome once again to EWTN's Bookmark. Our guest author is Edward Sri, author of Who Am I to Judge? Responding to Relativism with Logic and Love, published by Ignatius Press and the Augustine Institute. Always great to see you here.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
You know, obviously we air programs from the Augustine Institute. Symbolon was one of the main ones, and even this book is available as a video, right?
Yeah, we did a video series. It's an 8-part study. It comes with workbooks and leaders' guides that parishes or families can use to really give what many people don't get today, a moral worldview.
Why is this so confusing to people today? Do you think it's more confusing today than it had been?
Oh, absolutely. Everywhere I go, even at Catholic conferences or parishes I speak at, I meet people. They're good people. They go to church. They believe in God. They're sincere. But they're so scared to talk about morality today, so scared to say anything's definitively right or wrong. They're afraid to touch hot topic issues like marriage because they're afraid of offending someone. They're afraid that their friend or their family member is going to think that they're intolerant, judgmental. And so what so many good Christians are doing today is they're just remaining silent because they don't know what to say and they don't want to rock the boat in their relationship. So they just, I won't say anything.
Right, exactly. I'll just be quiet. Well, you say in the preface here, you talk about people you've met, I know it was at college over the years, you talk about young people especially, I think. For them, morality was just a personal opinion. Each individual makes up his own truth. Each decides for himself what is right or wrong. The one really bad thing to do in life is to make a judgment about someone else's moral beliefs. That would be intolerant. So when we boil this down in many ways, is it really the idea of toleration has become the greatest virtue? To be tolerant of whatever else somebody wants to do?
Yes and no. It is. That's how it's touted, right? We're going to just be tolerant. That's the best our secular world can really offer. Which is sad. Let's just be tolerant. Now, don't get me wrong. We should respect people that have different religious beliefs, moral beliefs, lifestyles, because they still have dignity as human persons made in God's image. But the best the secular world could offer is just be tolerant. And I think, no, we're made for love. I mean, if you ask me, hey, Edward Sri, how's your marriage going? And I say, oh, it's great. We've got an awesome marriage. We tolerate each other.
Right, exactly.
That's not an ideal marriage. We're made for love, not just mere tolerance. We tolerate, it's a blizzard outside in Denver. I tolerate that. Or it's a really rainy day, I tolerate that. Or I'm sick, I tolerate that. But we're recognizing that there's something off that we're tolerating. So, but we get along, and through the difficulty. We're called to do more than tolerance, though.
And the other issue is that as much as we talk about how everybody's tolerating, there are approved things to tolerate and things that apparently are unapproved to tolerate.
Exactly, yeah. So while
who decides that? Who makes that decision?
The more secular worldview.
It used to be the church, in many ways, would kind of do that. Now the arbiter has moved, right?
Yeah, it is the secular culture. It's Hollywood, it's the secular educational systems. These are the ones that are determining what's the new norms. And they talk about we're tolerant, we accept all points of view, but we all know in reality that's not the case. It's like everything's tolerated except traditional moral values. Everything's tolerated except the Catholic Church, except traditional Christianity. And so whether it's in the movies we watch, the songs that people listen to, the news, whether it's in modern educational systems, there are certain norms that are held up as everyone must believe this. Right. But don't you dare say this is right or wrong.
But are you surprised at times because what everybody seems to believe they have to believe now, it doesn't, you can go back not too long ago when that wasn't the case at all. So the lack of understanding historical perspective on issues is a big problem today.
Really big, and that's changing so rapidly, right? I mean, think about where we were, even, in the 1990s, the gay marriage issue wasn't that big of an issue back then, and all of a sudden it became the really big thing. Right. But today, the gay marriage, that's old news. That's so 2014.
Right, exactly,
right now we're trying to figure out bathrooms, right?
Yeah,
And so the thing just keeps changing so quickly where there's no moral standard.
Right. Now you talk about a girl named Kara in here about intolerance right in the beginning. Of course, with friends like hers, who needs enemies apparently here, because I guess she stood up in her class against gay marriage. She shows up at a party, and the first thing her best friend supposedly does is announce to the world, can you believe she did this? And then she's ridiculed, and out of that comes that kind of defensiveness where the person, as you were alluding to earlier, starts to back away or starts to personalize their belief system, right?
Yeah, I don't think people can appreciate just what pressure college students and young adults, people in their 20s and 30s, are facing. it's the fear they have to say anything's right or wrong. That's what happened to this gal. She gets basically emotionally beat up, so to speak, at a party because she just happened to believe marriage was between a man and a woman. She couldn't answer the question, so she leaves the party telling herself that, it's too hard to stand up for my faith. It's too hard to stand up for truth. And so what she does is she starts trying to do something to kind of keep some moral values, but yet fit in more. And she would add 2 little words to all of her moral statements moving forward. Just 2 simple little words. She'd say something like this when a hot topic issue would come up. Well, abortion is wrong for me. But if someone else wants to say it's okay for them, then that's fine for them. But for me, it's wrong. Or for me, marriage is between a man and a woman. If someone else thinks something different, that's fine for them. That was a way for her to kind of like stay in touch a little bit with her Catholic roots, at least in her own mind. She's trying. I still think abortion is wrong. I still think marriage is between a man and a woman. But then to fit in more. But that's a very dangerous move. Once we add those 2 little words, what that does is we're basically saying there is no moral structure to the universe. There is no moral truth in reality. It's just I make up my own truth. That issues like abortion or premarital sex or pornography or the definition of marriage become like, what's my favorite flavor of ice cream, or what sports team do I follow? For me, I like the Cubs more than the White Sox, or for me, chocolate's better than vanilla. And for me, abortion is wrong. But if someone else wants to like the White Sox, someone else wants vanilla, someone else wants abortion, that's fine for them. And here's the real danger, is once I do that, then when I'm faced with my own moral decisions, I have to make certain temptations, I don't have a moral compass to guide me anymore, because it's just for me. And if I could change my favorite flavor of ice cream, I could change my moral behavior, and that's what she did. She started doing things she never imagined doing before.
Well, it also seems in some ways it takes you off the hook, because on one level, you don't have to stand up for the truth and get the flack, but it also allows you, as you talk about in the book, the idea of saying, well, if I let you do these things that I'm not so big on, maybe I'll do these other things that you're not so big on, and you won't say anything to me. So we'll have a little quid pro quo going here.
Exactly. I think we have to realize that. When we're talking and debating moral issues, realize that there's this issue here, but there's a real person behind that issue, and they may have their own moral struggles, which don't relate to the issue itself. Like, so people may stand up for gay marriage, for example. Like, they say, we want to support this. But they themselves aren't interested in that. But what they are interested in is, I just don't want to say there's any right or wrong, so I can continue contracepting in my marriage, or I can continue going from one wife to the next, or I can continue, feeling good about myself and looking at pornography. Whatever it is, there might be some issue I'm struggling with, but moral relativism is really attractive to me because if I justify everybody else's little sins, then I can justify my own as well.
Right, exactly. Well, you say, so if morality is just personal taste, then why shouldn't our moral beliefs and practices change over time too?
Yeah, and that's what happened to this gal. This gal, Kara, in the story, the college student, she grew up in a good Catholic home, went to youth group. She was involved in her Newman Center on this big state university, so her freshman year, really involved in her faith. But after that incident, and when she started doing the for me kind of morality and becoming relativist in her heart, that was a slippery slope for her. And at the end of that year, she starts getting involved in things on college campus that she never imagined doing. She leaves the Catholic Church, stops going to Mass on Sunday, and becomes a relativist. And I've talked to countless young adults who've told me that's happened to me. Maybe not the exact same scenario, but the pressure they felt. I remember one young adult telling me this. He says, you know what? Yeah, once you make that little move for me, it's a slippery slope. And you start justifying one thing after another in the culture, and then you start justifying one thing after another in your own moral life, and then 3 years later you wake up and you realize, I'm not the same person I used to be.
What happened? Right. Well, once you lose your anchor, you drift. I used to always talk about the undertow pulling you down the beach. If you're not anchored, you don't realize you've drifted. And there's a famous movie years ago said, how can you go, it's tough to go any given day without at least one good, juicy rationalization to get through the day. And that's a lot of the way the secular culture is. You say, others wonder whether making moral judgments is itself a problem, maybe even the chief problem in the world. So it's better not to make moral judgments at all.
That's what people think, right? And they'll quote Jesus in the Bible, right? Jesus said, don't judge, so what are you Christians doing judging people?
Well, people hear that. So you're a professor. Tell me, when I hear that and say, well, I'm not supposed to judge people when I see them doing things they shouldn't be doing, I shouldn't judge them. What does that mean, actually? What was Jesus actually talking about?
Yeah. Okay, here's the key. There's a big difference between making a judgment and judging someone's soul. So, God gave us a mind. He wants us to make judgments, right? It's a blizzard outside, I make a judgment. I'm going to get a winter coat, or if I see my little toddler ready to run into a busy street, I make a judgment. That's not good for her. She's going to get hurt.
Right.
And I can even judge someone's moral actions. If I see some woman ready to have an abortion or some young college student sleeping around, I can use my mind and make a judgment. That's not good for them. They're going to hurt themselves if they do these acts. Now, I'm not judging their soul. Their situation before God, are they going, I'm not condemning them and saying they're going to hell. I don't know that. I don't know the background. I don't know the possibility of God's grace coming in and making a change in their life. That's between them and God. I can never judge the soul. And that's what Jesus talks about in the Sermon on the Mount. Don't judge in the sense of don't condemn someone's soul. That's between them and God alone.
Which is why the church never says who's in hell.
Exactly. And I can't do that as an individual. But yet the Bible also is very comfortable talking about, we've got to use our mind to make judgments. St. Paul talks about the spiritual man judges all things. You've got to make wise decisions in your moral choices. Absolutely. So yes, use your mind, make judgments on moral actions. But then don't condemn someone because you don't know the whole story. You don't know what their spiritual status is before God.
And also, to some degree, gauge your own judgment on how you want to be judged, too. We hear that. How does that fit in?
Well, that's what Jesus is saying. Don't judge lest you be judged.
Right.
It's in the sense of, to the extent that I'm going in and going, I noticed what you did. And so I have a judgmental attitude towards you. You're a horrible person, or you must be in mortal sin, or what. I'm kind of coming in and playing the role of God there. That's very dangerous because again, I don't know the whole story. I don't know this person's background, their upbringing, the wounds they're carrying, all that. And do I want to be judged just for my little slip-ups that I make in my life?
Or do I want to be? Is it my job to express the same mercy that I want the Lord to have on me?
Exactly.
Right.
And then that's the crucial thing is, am I radiating that mercy?
Right.
Forgive, we say in the Our Father, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those. Do I have that attitude of forgiveness and mercy radiating from my heart? Or do I have a critical, judgmental attitude?
And that's the question I think for so many people to discern is what's the difference between a laissez-faire, anything goes attitude, and defining that as mercy, versus the fact that it's harder sometimes to stand up for the truth than it is to just look the other way.
Yeah, let's use this example. Let's say like that college student that's sleeping around. Just use that as an example. I make a judgment in my mind. That's not good for her. She's not going to find the love she's looking for. She's never going to be happy this way. We need to love her. And I need to show her what the truth is. Now, again, I'm not judging her soul. I'm not condemning her. But if I love her and I care about her, I should share the truth with her. Maybe not right away, but in the right time, in the right way, with great humility and gentleness. I should talk to her and be able to say, here's a better way. You're going to be happier if you follow God's plan for love and sexuality. That's real love. Real love isn't being indifferent and sitting there and saying, well, I wouldn't do that, but it's not my life. That's not love. If I see my daughter ready to go in the street, I don't say, oh, well, if that works for you, I don't want to impose my views on being a toddler on you. That's not love.
Right.
And so we don't judge someone's soul. I don't condemn the person. But if I love them and I've made a judgment that this isn't good for them, I want to talk to them. I want to share the truth with them.
That's the more loving thing to do.
Exactly. It's actually indifference.
Right.
If I just sit back and say whatever.
Right, exactly.
That's not love.
Now, you talk about it's a highly readable book. It's meant to help people deal with the anything goes culture. You say the book also offers 7 practical keys you can use in your conversations with relativists. How'd you come up with 7? It's just a neat number, or are those the ones that work?
7's a great number, of course. It's a good biblical number. But this from years of giving seminars and parishes on relativism, working with college students, adults on relativism, teaching on this topic, I kind of gravitated toward it. Here's 7 things. Could you come up with a dozen? Sure. Could you shorten it to 3? Maybe. But I like these 7. And they're practical to help people in their conversations. So it's one thing to give someone a logical argument. Here's reasons why relativism is wrong. But it's a whole other thing when I'm looking across the table at my friend or my cousin, and I have to talk to them about moral truth.
Right.
What do I do in that situation when something comes up? Some moral topic comes up and they're saying, don't be so intolerant. Why is the church so judgmental? What do we do in those moments? Here's 7 keys that can help you in that.
Well, in part 2, a new vision under the title, But I'm Not Hurting Anyone, which we hear all the time. I'm doing this, I'm not bothering anybody, you should leave me alone. But you do bring up something that's sometimes you hear about in business as well, is the idea of the questions behind the questions. And you say, if we're going to be successful in our conversations with relativists, we have to ask the question behind the question, What do you mean by that?
Okay, what I mean there is, when we're talking with relativistic friends, like we might be talking about this issue. Maybe it's abortion, maybe it's, gay marriage, immigration, whatever the topic is, who knows. There's a lot of other issues behind that particular issue. They may support abortion because of their view of freedom, that someone should be free to do whatever they want with their lives. They may be supporting abortion because they have a very individualistic understanding of the human person, that they don't see us as living in community and a responsibility to care for other people. So we have to go at that deeper level, which is the level of worldview. I tell the story about when I was in college, I first heard the word relativism from my roommate, who was taking an ethics class at Indiana University, and I hadn't studied much theology at the time. And I asked him, well, what is your teacher teaching? And he said, oh, it's this idea called relativism. It's awesome. It's the idea that there's no truth. Everyone makes up their own truth. And I turned to him, kind of junior apologist, and said, so is that true? Is it true for everyone that there's no truth? I was like, gotcha.
Right.
Thinking, oh, I won the argument. And he kind of admitted, yeah, that wasn't really consistent. But he went on persevering and being a relativist. He was totally fine with a little bit of logical inconsistency. And the point I make is that it's not enough just to argue with the relativist. There's no elevator speech or three-point argument. We need to really engage at a deeper level. And that's there's so many fundamental issues underneath their relativism, their view of what love is, who the human person is, what we're made for, what makes us happy, what is freedom. These are the issues that lead to their relativistic conclusions. And if we don't address those, we're never going to win.
Now, you also have questions for reflection and discussion. So do you see this as something people would use in a parish level as well, or is this tied into the video series?
Yeah, two things. One, someone could just get the book on their own and just use it for their own personal reflection. They could do it in a small group. Book studies can use it. But then we did develop the video series, the 8-part study that could be used for men's groups, women's groups, Bible studies, adult faith formation. And so that's, there's 8 videos that go through the different aspects, kind of tied in with the book. But it comes with workbooks, with leaders' guides and participant guides to make it easy to facilitate small group discussion.
Now, you talk about something about getting freedom right as the chapter and the idea of negative freedom. That people would say, how can there be negative freedom? But you say the modern notion of freedom trains us to become slaves to our selfishness. How so?
Yeah, so the modern view of freedom is I'm just free to do whatever I want. Just don't tell me what to do. It's my life. But think about that. That's actually what we train people in. Yeah, you're free to do whatever you want. But if I'm always doing what I want, when I want, how often I want, in the way I want, I'm not free to give myself as a gift to other people, to make sacrifices for others. It's not easy for me to live for something bigger than myself because I'm just a slave to my own preferences, my own self-interest, my own comfort, because I've trained myself to always just want to do what I want to do all the time, whereas real freedom is found when I make myself a gift, as John Paul II says. It's found when it's easy for me to live for others and to live for my God. And that comes through the skills I need, known as the virtues. I make the point that, are you free to speak Russian? Well, the cops aren't going to come and try to stop you here in the United States, thanks be to God. But unless you have acquired the skills of speaking Russian, you can't do it. Or are you free to play the violin? Well, not only if you've had the training. If not, you're just free to make noise.
Right. And we talk about that in The Art of Living in the chapter, and I was just looking at that culture of independent thinkers.
Yeah.
Right, where you say, yet imagine you're a young child who wants to learn how to play the piano or told to go figure it out for yourself or on your own. No one mentions that there are piano teachers who could help you. And you go on and later on you say that in the chapter, and this is something that we've found with people, and I'm sure you've found it over the years with the Augustine Institute and the work you've done, where people say, why didn't anyone tell me? Or why didn't people tell me before that this was out there, that EWTN was available, or what the truth was about this? But it makes so much sense, the idea of saying, you're not going to tell somebody to figure out how to play the piano on their own.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that. You go away to college and you've been just pecking away at your piano all on your own, not knowing about who Bach and Beethoven and Mozart are, not having any sense of what musical notation is, not having any piano teachers, and you could play Three Blind Mice really well. And then you meet people who can play a Mozart concerto, and you're like, whoa, that's cool. And then they tell you about piano teachers. They tell you about all this tradition of musical notation and chords and all this, and you're like, how come no one ever taught me that? You'd feel cheated, really cheated, right? And that's how many young people feel today. I meet many young adults that they come across the church's teaching on sex. They hear theology of the body. They watch something on EWTN. It's like, wow, how come no one told me that? Or parents Like after they've parented, their kids are like, why didn't anyone teach me about how to parent well? We are deliberately in our culture withholding the art of living. There's an amazing tradition on the virtues and how to live life, but in the name of relativism, we say, just be your own person, go figure it out on your own.
Well, in your section, we lead to 7 keys. Lead with mercy, relativism wounds people, law equals love, making judgments versus judging souls. Relativism is not neutral. This is one. Relativism is a mask. How so?
Yeah, Pope Benedict talks about that, the dictatorship of relativism. Remember that great saying, but who's the dictator? He says it's one's own ego and one's own desires. And we have to realize that many times, not in every case, but I think many times, people are attracted to relativism because it justifies the way they're living. You know, psychologists talk about cognitive dissonance. You know, how we have to have peace between our beliefs and our behaviors. You know, and if I'm doing something where I'm not comfortable with, you know, it doesn't match up with my beliefs, what do? It's easier to change my beliefs to justify my behavior.
I have to reject that.
Than to do this, right? You know, so I tell a fun story. If I like want to make a commitment, New Year's resolution, I'm going to eat healthy foods until I go out with my friends and those onion rings, and I see myself eating those onion rings. What do I have to do? I either stop eating or I make a justification. Oh, it's just this one time, or onions are a vegetable, you know, something to justify it. That's what I think people do with relativism, is it's an attractive philosophy. If there's something I'm doing that deep down I know I shouldn't be doing and I'm not comfortable with myself, I'm a little bit ashamed of this, I'm not at peace, relativism helps me to change my beliefs to justify my sinful behavior.
Right. You say relativists aren't expecting a Christian to play their own don't judge Trump card on them. It's interesting you put Trump in there, but with all
that was written before the election.
I was going to say you were prophetic here, Edward. What do you mean we can't that we play that Trump card of don't judge?
Here's the thing. Okay, this is one of the practical keys. You're in the conversation. It's Thanksgiving dinner. Aunt Sally's there, and she's saying, "Why are you being so judgmental?" What do? You know what you do? You just come right back and say, "Excuse me, Aunt Sally, are you judging me?" Because I think it's great to do that and say, you know, because I feel like you think I'm a mean, judgmental person. And she'll probably say, well, you shouldn't tell other people what to do. And I say, well, hold on a second. Look, you know, you're a free human being. If you want to believe in relativism, you can do that. It doesn't make sense to me. But you know, if you want to believe there's no moral truth, there's no moral structure to the universe, you're free to do that. And we can be friends. I'll respect you. I disagree. Doesn't make any sense. But here's the one thing, Aunt Sally. Whatever you do, please do not impose your belief that there's no truth, your faith in moral relativism on me. Don't impose it on me. And I think that's what Pope Benedict wants us to do. He wants us to push back on this culture of relativism. You see, relativism is a point of view. It's a way of looking at the world. It's not a neutral position. You know, that's what they often...
Which is one of the keys you talk about here.
Yeah, they often kind of make themselves like the moral Switzerland. Like, well, we don't know what truth is, so we get along with everybody. Well, that's not true. Relativism is a way of looking at life. And they're imposing their way of looking at life on us. They haven't convinced me of relativism. It doesn't make sense. So let's get in the offensive positions as Christians here and start asking them questions, saying, so tell me about your relativism. Tell me why you think relativism makes sense. Do you really believe that? Is genocide okay? If some rapist says, well, for me, rape is okay, does that make it okay? You start asking them questions, and they'll start realizing they're skating on thin ice.
But it's interesting too because, and you alluded to this idea of sometimes people talk about a secular religion or a relativism being like a religion for these people. Is that, and you mentioned it earlier, I think, and I've seen it before, the idea that the fact that things logically fit together doesn't seem to impair their belief system. They can believe diametrically opposed different things that you point out, and at the end of the day, it becomes how I feel about it and not how I think about it. Or they say think when they really mean feel. And you can't tell me how to feel.
Right. What's sad is we're living in the days of Aristotle's Ethics, Book 10. And Aristotle talks about that sometimes a culture can become so depraved that they do not, rationality doesn't really appeal to them. It's all emotions. And that's totally where we are. It's our emotions and passions guiding us. That's why, I titled the book Responding to Relativism with Logic and Love.
Right.
I mean, we need the logic because they're still human persons. We got to keep appealing there, but we can't only do that. If you just do that, you're going to sound like an abstract philosopher, and you're never going to reach people's hearts. We have to appeal to the head and the heart. And so that's why those keys, some of them we're talking about, are meant to help appeal to the heart, and help people, let's think about your experience for a moment. Okay, you're sleeping around, you're justifying it under relativism, but are you really happy? There's a lot of insecurity in your relationship there. There's a lot of fear that this is going to end because there's really no commitment there. You start talking about their experience, and then they may be open to the rationality, but you can't lead with only just the moral truth. You've got to appeal to people's experiences.
Right, and I think there's this kind of phony idea out there that everybody's judging everybody in these harsh puritanical ways, which is not the case at all. And it's really a straw man that's used against the church.
Yeah, and that's why I want to come right back and say, why are you judging me? Why are you judging the church? Have you even listened to really what the church is saying about that? Because the church is actually the most tolerant, most respectful of all different religions and groups that exist on the planet. But you're just assuming that because they happen to make a judgment, make a statement that something's wrong, that they're judging people's souls.
Another book in the works?
Yeah, I'm on sabbatical right now at the Augustine Institute. My first sabbatical in 20 years, that's great. And I'm working on a couple projects. One is a book on the Blessed Virgin Mary in Scripture, on every little New Testament data point about Our Lady, just milking it for all it's worth. What does it tell us about who she was and her role in the Christian life? And then I'm probably going to do something on the Lent and the Passion narratives and some things on evangelization as well.
Sounds good. We're in the 100th anniversary year of Our Lady of Fatima, so very appropriate. Thank you so much. Edward Shree, author of Who Am I to Judge? Responding to Relativism with Logic and Love, available through the EWTN Religious Catalog. Join us next time right here on EWTN's Bookmark. Thanks.